Join us as we review the Packers selections from rounds 5 through 7 and discuss which of these players can make an impact this season. We will also take a look at the Detroit Lions offseason and what they have done to attempt to stay on top of the division.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is Sounds Gouda, episode 5. I am one of your co-hosts, Jordan Olson, and this is Rob Ralph, my best friend and counterpart. Thank you for being here to new and return listeners. We're excited to be talking Packers with you all again in this week's episode. Just a reminder that we have new episodes every Thursday coming out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. In today's episode, we will be reviewing the Packers selections from the late rounds 5 through 7. Have some discussion on which of these players could and hopefully will make an impact in 2024. And do our last divisional check-in, checking on the Detroit Lions draft and offseason. All right. Rob, take it away with our picks from the late rounds.
Yeah, so just doing a little bit of an overview, like we've told you guys on the previous podcasts. We are taking this information from NFL.com. As we've said in the previous couple of podcasts as well, we're looking to diversify our information and resources as we move forward. But for the sake of this exercise, that's what we're going to be using for the information for these players. So Jacob Monk, a rare 5-year starter and 2-year team captain with explosive power and plus athleticism. I think right off the bat, Monk will be dinged for his lack of ideal size as a center, even though I think that he moves pretty darn well. At least it's what he's shown on tape. He's going to have trouble with bulky two-gappers who can snap a punch into him and quickly separate. However, one-gapping defenders will have their hands quite full as he grabs onto them. He's capable of washing them down and outright pancaking them. Monk can slide and redirect A-gap rushers, but an offensive line coach must get him to protect with inside hands. Monk's blend of football IQ, nimble feet, and power give him a realistic chance to compete for a job, no matter how he gets into a camp. Just some strengths: 5-year starter and a 2-time team captain. Again, we're talking about many years starting at multiple positions at Duke, and also a team captain. Weight room warrior, possessing explosive hips and upper body power. I hadn't heard this one before, and as we were going through our show notes, so that one just kind of makes me laugh, and you can actually see that on the tape. Just the weight room warrior line is pretty funny. Athleticism, pops and pass slides in as a pulling screen blocker. Uses hand strength and leg drive really well on contact as some of his strengths. Some weaknesses: addresses pass rusher with wide hands and an open frame. Can absorb first contact more often than dealing in it with protection. Needs to eliminate the leaning and the reaching. Could struggle to impose power on defenders with length. Moves well, but might have trouble collecting second level movement. So overall, pretty excited about what Jacob Monk can get, and especially where we got him from. Moving on, Kitan Oladapo. Oladapo possesses classic strong safety traits and play attributes, which should help evaluators define him more easily. He has very good size with the play and strength and toughness to tackle near the box and cover skills to line up over tight ends and man coverage. While he can play some split safety, he can be a little inconsistent in big space, so playing forward is his best bet. There is room for improvement as a tackler, but he generally pursues with leverage and takes his role as last line of defense to heart. He has a make-it size and attributes. He's likely to come in as a backup with special teams duties, especially, but has a pretty good shot of becoming an eventual starter. Some strengths and weaknesses for Kitan: athletic frame with desired build and play strength for the NFL. I think he's 6'2". So pretty tall, pretty lengthy. Team captain, again, another team captain who gets the back end situated pre-snap. Swoops in using proper angles to clean up leaky edges and run support. Stays in balance to tackle while driving downhill toward the play. Some weaknesses, bumpy transitions out of back pedal and can struggle and change of direction, especially in big space. Gets overtaken by long speed when situated as a deep safety. Needs to meet blocking receivers with quicker pop to eliminate them. Can be decisive diagnosing mesh point on zone read and RPOs, or run play options. And shorter arms create some inconsistency as a wrap-up tackler. Jordan, you want to talk about Travis Glover?
Yeah, sure. So Travis Glover, another player with a lot of experience, a 5-year starter with elite speed. Glover's well propositioned with good lean mass. His stance is funky and might need to be converted to improve his pass sets and avoid play tells. He has good length, but his hands can be late or inaccurate, which mitigates his size length advantage. He's a plus drive blocker and can climb up or outside the box and adjust to movement. His improved hand usage and placement will bolster his consistency both as a run and pass blocker, but quick defenders might always trouble him. Whether he ends up a tackler or guard, Glover has the traits and upside that could allow him to stick around on a roster and improve his chances for eventual playing time. One thing that I think about Glover, he's probably our biggest project draft pick, I think.
I would think so.
Yeah, and I do think that they probably will try him all around the line to see where he has a fit. But some strengths of his: highly experienced with momentous frame and excellent length. So this is a guy that is a little bit out of the Packers' normal thresholds, but as a 6th-round pick, that's kind of where they take chances on guys, 6th, 7th round and undrafted players. Plays with good bend and athleticism for a player of his size. Has enough mirror talent and have hand strength to survive at tackle. Rolls his hips into kick-out blocks to crowd and leverage at the end. He has power in his lower half that clears lanes and down blocks and can make timely adjustments to different movements as a blocker in space. So a couple of his weaknesses: he'll need to lower his punch arm as his hands frequently fly into the rusher's face. He has an inconsistent feel for pocket depth, likely to need help against wide 9 looks and some quicker rushers. Too much head ducking at first contact and needs to speed up his hand strikes, fitting into his run blocks. So kind of moving on into our 7th-round selections. I'm excited to talk about Michael Pratt. He is a highly experienced and respected team leader. Pratt has showed consistent improvement from season to season, has done a nice job of making safe decisions instead of reckless ones, and has throws and touch at all 3 levels. He struggles to throw with consistency and accuracy on placement and intermediate throws. Reminds me a little bit of Jordan Love's beginning of last season, but thankfully he figured that out. But also appears to lack the anticipation and field awareness to beat NFL coverage across the field. He has day 3 potential and will battle to win a future backup role, which I think that's where he might end up as the number 2. Interesting. I think a lot of people thought that Michael Pratt may be as high as a 3rd or 4th round selection. We obviously got some great value with him in the 7th round. Strengths: 3-year team captain. Obvious, here we are talking about captain again, but that's something they value. Displayed consistent improvement over 4 years. Light feet in the pocket and can slide and adjust when he's pressured. Consistently alters his touch relative to the throw that is needed. And does a nice job of selling pump and goes on throws and has adequate mobility to create additional yardage as a scrambler. Some weaknesses: below average timing and arm talent as a full field thrower versus projecting into NFL coverage. I saw some pretty nice plays on tape, including some game winning throws and game winning drives that he made. Doesn't throw with enough anticipation against zone windows. Slow to get through progressions and locate open targets on the backside. Struggles with consistent accuracy and ball placement outside the numbers. and forces wide receivers to break stride on downfield throws. So some deficiencies, but with the 7th round pick, plenty of talent to work through and either be a long-term backup or somebody who we can get some draft capital for in a couple of years. So, Rob, want to talk about Kaelin King?
Yeah, Kaelin King, one of my darlings from the draft. Pretty excited about him and what he can possibly do this year for us. King's 2022 performance was significantly better than what he put on tape in 2023, but it might not be enough to sway some evaluators. King was consistently rocked out of position by route breaks over the first 2 levels, and he didn't find the ball frequently enough with his back to the passer on deep shots. He doesn't have the same fluidity to just mirror and match route, so he'll need to get back to playing more. He'll need some more physicality from press to slow down some route momentum. King is more than capable of tilting 50-50 balls in his favor when he's in the right position, but finding positioning in man or zone coverages as a pro could be very challenging. Strengths: showed ability to slow press release with his hands in 2022, finished 2022 with 15 pass breakups and 3 interceptions, opens gate and strides with long routes downfield, swings long arms around a receiver to swat throws when in position, comes up and shocks perimeter blockers with good punch. I think we saw a lot of that in 2022, but for some reason not as much in 2023. Some weaknesses: lacks change of direction balance for sticky man coverage. Easy catch windows were consistently open on him in 2023. Loses coverage, focus and coverage when attacked with combo routes. Can be a step slow reading quarterback's operation from zone and rushes downhill with poor technique and control as a tackler. So a multitude of different things that could have contributed to his not as good of play this year as to oppose as a year before. So, Jordan, with these late round picks, which of these players do you think will make the biggest impact in 2024?
Yeah, great question, Rob. I have 3 players. We have 3 players on our list that we'll spend a little bit of time talking about, but I'm going to start with Kitan Oladapo. Well, he's a little bit older right now. He's 23. He'll turn 24 in October. Not a big issue for a later round pick. He's a player that has a lot of experience. I think besides the team captain, the culture fits. The Packers have selected a lot of guys who have experience playing. And I think that's going to show up for him as he competes for a starting job. So, Bullard is obviously going to probably have the first crack at being that starting safety opposite Xavier McKinney when we have 2 safeties on the field at the same time. But if we move Bullard into a position where he's a nickel for us or he's playing snaps, I think Oladapo has a pretty strong chance of being that box safety. I know that Williams was drafted higher, but personally, I was much higher on Kitan Oladapo coming out of the draft. One area that I think that you can see Oladapo being used specifically is on coverage of tight ends. His tape and his track record of covering tight ends as a bigger, more physical safety really has locked down those in college, right? We have some great tight ends in the division and the league. Obviously, Sam Laporta is a problem, and finding a guy who can cover him in space is going to be great. We got attacked pretty profusely over the middle in that 49ers game, and I see a lot of these draft picks. Obviously, we strengthened up the middle with the intention to maybe mitigate some of that. He's going to be really aggressive against the run. I see him fitting the run well in the box, coming up to make tackles, and having just a good overall physical mentality that he brings to the game. So just a couple other notes that may hinder his ability to be a starter or play early on is that he is missing some time in minicamp and probably will miss. He missed minicamp and he'll probably will miss OTAs, but hopefully he'll be ready for training camp. He did have surgery on his toe following an injury he had at the combine, but he still managed to test at his pro day and put up pretty decent numbers as well. So At a minimum, he's going to contribute on special teams. He had some experience there in college, but not extensive. But I see him as a pivotal piece for Rich Bisaccia over the next couple of years. So a lot of upside with him. Don't be surprised if he's your starting safety opposite of Xavier McKinney. But yeah, I don't know, Rob, you got anything else to add about Kitan? I'm really excited about him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, I am as well. Well, I agree with most of the things that you said too, as well. It will be interesting, as we've alluded to before, just the competition there, who comes out of that. By the way, I think he's extremely versatile, and can bring a lot out of the Packers. All depends on how he comes back from injury, where they're playing him at in training camp. We'll see quite a bit, as well as preseason. I'm sure he'll get a lot of looks as well too, to be able to see what he can do. So moving on, Kaelin King, 21 years old. He will be for most of the season. He's really, really young. Labeled as a first-round pick coming into the season, before the season started, and then had the down 2022 year. Or he had the good 2022 year, and this last year was not as good. Theme of looking at traits and performance from previous seasons. Showed ability to be sticky in coverage and make plays on the ball. There's more than a few plays of that a year ago, which made him a elite first, second round pick. He can be a really aggressive tackler, especially on some of those wide passes out to the wide receivers. Made some really good plays out there in the flat. So he's willing to do that and be an aggressive tackler for that, and can rally to the tackle. He played a lot of nickel in mini camp, which is interesting. Can he be this year's Valentine or Sam Shields? You never know. There's always one or possibly two players every year that seem to come out and shine at a training camp that get a roster spot that can show out and then have a really good season. So we definitely hope so. And then he's got really good experience with kick coverage and could be a gunner on teams. Anything there on Kaelin King that you'd want to add in?
I mean, I think this is the draft darling, right? Everybody thinks that he has a really high potential to make an impact given his pedigree, right? And I think your note about the Packers having a theme of looking at traits and past performance is really critical with Kaelin King. They've seen the traits, they've seen the tape. They hope to be able to coach him up and figure out how to move past from some of his deficiencies last season. To your question about Valentine or Sam Shields, I see a lot of Sam Shields in his game, and particularly if he's going to move inside, play the nickel, move side to side with some of these slot receivers. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to come out and cover a guy like Justin Jefferson, but he's got some movement skills, and clearly the Packers think so too, trying to test him in the nickel, that could be an option. And I think that Keyshawn's obviously got a chance to start there. Bullard may be the best fit there. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Kaelin King in some nickel and dime snaps covering wide receivers and running backs coming over the middle of the field. So, and I think another guy that relative to his draft pedigree or profile coming out that we should all be really excited about is Jacob Monk. This is a player that has a ton of experience. He started 58 games, 36 at right guard, 12 at right tackle, and 10 at center. I think most people are projecting. I know, that's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah.
So he started games in all 5 years at Duke. And you can see not only can you project that versatility, but he has experience being versatile. He even played multiple games in 2023 where he played center, guard, and tackle in the same game due to some injuries and some formational things that they were trying to do. So one other item of note, he only had one sack allowed in the last 2 seasons. Gave up a few more pressures, but I know that was one of the issues last year when we were kind of weak in the early season is that our interior line was getting blown up by some of the better defensive tackles in the league and even some of the mid-tier guys. So if we can mitigate that with a little depth here, I think that's pretty great. So what else? You got any other notes on Monk? I'm pretty excited about him, actually.
Yeah, I know I talked a lot about Kaelin King as kind of being the darling, and for sure, and especially the value and what he showed on tape a year ago. But man, I am so excited for Jacob Monk. I do think he'll be the future center. Depending on what happens this year. I know Josh Myers is already coined as the veteran and going to be the center, and rightfully so. And like you were saying in previous episodes, maybe that's just some of the say from the coaches, right? Because he's the veteran and he's the one that's had the experience, and they're definitely going to give him that shot. But you are absolutely correct. We got gashed up the middle multiple times. Myers did end up playing a little bit better towards the end of the season, but I still think he ranked in the back half of the centers in the league, at least to some metrics like PFF and some other ones as well too. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there, and if we can shore that up, give Jordan Love another second or two or three to make a throw or to scramble out of the pocket or whatever ends up being, I think would be massive. I love this guy's experience. Only one sack allowed in 2 seasons. Yeah, I understand he played at Duke, but still, that's quite incredible. 36 starts at right guard. That's incredible. 12 at right tackle, and 10 at center. So I really love his game. He might even be my second draft crush. Who knows? He might even overtake that from Kaelin King for me. Just really excited about what this guy can bring and what he can do for our offensive line.
A couple of other traits that stand out for me, he has very large hands, which obviously is something that you worry about with center. I know supposedly a couple years ago, that's why we didn't take Creed Humphrey, which we probably all dramatically regret now because he supposedly had small hands. But should provide good ball security with those big mitts. And I really think that he's going to probably be one of our primary swing interior players and a great depth piece. And as you noted, a potential future starter at center or guard, but he's going to have to compete with Travis Glover, Donovan Jennings, and Royce Newman. I don't really think that there's a competition with Royce Newman. I think he probably will find himself off the roster by cut number 1 in training camp, because I think that there's just so much more upside and potential with a guy like Monk and Donovan Jennings. So, I think those are our guys from the late rounds we think that could make an impact this year. And we'll see. We've had some good ones in the past years. Obviously, Carl Brooks and Carrington Valentine, Kingsley Anabari. So we'll see which one or multiple of these guys that Gouda hopefully hit this year. Let's go ahead and let's check in on the Lions to kind of wrap up our look around the division.
Yeah, the Lions, the Kings of the North, at least this last season, really had quite the turnaround. I can't ever remember the last time we've spoken about the Lions like this, because it's been decades. But they've really put something special together over there. Their general manager, Brad Holmes, I believe he came from New England. I'm not quite sure. Could be wrong on that. Obviously, their coach is Dan Campbell. I really, really love Dan Campbell. Half of my family, my cousins, are from Michigan, so they're diehard Lions fans. Have been living in misery for multiple years, decades plus. So, not to give some
just a
sprinkle.
Side note on,
Go ahead.
Just a side note on that too. I have a wife who's a Lions fan. I met my wife here in Michigan, and a father-in-law who's a pretty big Lions fan too. So I am very happy for my new family and that fan base. And for those of you who've been watching and wondering why I have a Chauncey Billups jersey in the background, that is my wife's, and the Giannis jersey is mine. 2 MVP or NBA Finals MVPs that we have hanging back there. But yeah, as a Packers fan, I'm excited for my family, but I'm hoping that my new family, but I'm hoping we take back the division this year. So, what were some of the headlines this year, Rob, for the Lions in this offseason?
Yeah. So obviously the news that just came out, they extended Jared Goff. Pretty big contract for Jared Goff. So they gave him the bag. They gave Amon-Ra St. Brown quite a bit of money and a great contract. Obviously, well deserving of that. Stud wide receiver. And then their stud tackle Penny Sewell. They gave him a contract as well. They definitely reworked the secondary as one of their weaknesses heading in to this year from last year. They did that through the draft picks of Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw, as we'll get into here. But they also made a trade with the Buccaneers to get Carlton Davis too as well. And then just some other notes as well too. I know that Ben Johnson, the OC, and Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, were in some top runnings for some head coaching positions through this year. And they were worried about losing one or possibly two of those guys, but they were able to keep both of those in Detroit. So that should just continue to help that offense and that team. So
Ben Johnson's a scary coordinator. He's a brilliant offensive mind, and I was hoping that he might move on, and we'd be able to see what the Lions' offense looked like without him. But the Lions fans should be really excited that he's back for another run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, he's great. Very creative in his play calling. Excellent. And I was actually a little bit shocked he didn't get a head coaching job. So, 2024 draft picks. So I'll go through these quick. Round 1, pick 24, obviously swooped up ahead of us. They got cornerback Terrion Arnold from Alabama. Round 2, pick 61 overall, cornerback Ennis Rakestraw Jr. I know a lot of us Packers fans were kind of picking him at some point, maybe possibly going towards the Packers in our early draft conversation once the Super Bowl was over. Round 4, pick 126 overall, offensive tackle Giovanni Manu. I believe he was a Packers top 30 visit. Wasn't he, Jordan?
He was. Yep. And indeed, he's a player from British Columbia, so not too many non-combine invite Canadian players get drafted in the fourth round. I think the Packers were hoping they would be able to get him in the seventh round or as a UDFA, but obviously the Lions were interested as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And after watching his tape too, really did like what I saw and thought that he could be a really good value pick. So round 4, pick 126 is where he went. They had 2 fourth rounds. The next one, round 4, pick 132, running back Seon Vaki.
Yeah, Seon Vaki.
I got it. All right. Round 6, pick 189 overall. Defensive tackle McKee Wingo. And then round 6, pick 210 overall, their last one. A little bit of a familiar face, at least for Halfley. Guard Christian
Mahogany. Smells of rich mahogany.
Yes, yeah. They always have these interesting names. I feel like the names keep getting harder and harder. So my continuing with butchering names because words are hard will probably continue throughout this offseason. So what are some...
Rob and I work on...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as Rob and I work on our amateur journalism career here, we're going to have to get better with name pronunciation.
Absolutely, specifically me. So what about some additions and losses and re-signs, Jordan, for them?
Two notes that I have about the Lions draft pick still. Interesting note on Christian Mahogany. I think he was projected to be a day 2 pick originally. One thing that I found out in the dark deep dives of the interwebs is that actually Christian Mahogany has a leg that I believe is an inch and a half shorter than his other leg. I don't know if that was a red flag for teams kind of developing a weird hitch or gait. Obviously, it didn't affect his play at Boston College, but a pretty solid overall player that might be a steal for them at round 6. And Sion Viaki is a really exciting and interesting two-way player. Started games at safety and running back, and somebody I was pretty interested in for the Packers as well. So Lions may have found a couple steals again. Couple additions. Signed a couple players on the edge. Mathieu Betts and Marcus Davenport. I know they're looking forward to having Justin Houston back, but that was one of their probably biggest weaknesses after the secondary was finding a secondary edge player that could provide some pass rush. Another cornerback to just throw in the mix, Akeem Robertson. A player that I like, but has a little beef with the Packers from last year's combined practices, DJ Reader. He signed a nice deal with them, and they're going to be pretty strong up the middle with Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader. So hopefully this move for interior line that we've made can kind of match that. And then signed a guard, Kevin Zettler. Some little losses. Not too many big names. They lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. Obviously, they've added some players to their secondary. Chase Lucas was another addition. I believe they got rid of Cam Sutton as well. Veteran Zach Ertz is no longer a Lion. Third wide receiver Josh Reynolds signed with the Broncos. Some interior or some offensive linemen that they moved on from, Jonah Jackson, Matt Nelson, and Max Pritchard, along with some defenders, Julian Okawara, Benito Jones, and Anthony Pittman. So a couple of players they re-signed that are of note. Brock Wright, the Lions matched his contract. They re-signed Donovan Peoples-Jones. Michael Badgley, their kicker, they re-signed. Long snapper. Really kind of a list of some other roster fillers that I don't really need to get into. So can they repeat as divisional champs? I think that's the big hope. They probably want to hang a second banner in their rafters that say NFC champions on it. Little dialogue and back and forth at the end of last season about that. But I think that they are a very capable and strong football team if their secondary is better than it was last year. They return most of their key players on offense. I do think they've gotten a little bit thinner at wide receiver. A lot of that will depend on what Jameson Williams can bring to the roster. He's never really lived up to his potential yet, whether that's due to injury or suspension. But he's going to need to step up in that receiver room. But I ultimately see somewhere between a 12 and a 13 win season for the Lions. By the time you've listened to this, you've probably hopefully listened to our episode on the schedule release. We did a bonus episode that we released earlier in the week. And you'll see that we have at least I have the Packers and the Lions with a very similar projection on the season. So who knows, maybe we'll be in a tiebreaker scenario to end the year. One way or another, it's going to be a fun season. I think with the Lions and the Packers at the top of that division. So, Rob, you got any closing notes for us before we end this episode?
Yeah, hopefully we can take back over the North. We don't hang NFC North Division winners banners at Lambeau, so we strive to get banners that are higher than that. But I do feel good for the Lions fans, for my family, your family as well too. A little bit of a soft spot in my heart for them, just many years of misery and suffering. So, but with that being said, being a diehard Packer fan, this is the new really big division rival, all depending on what happens with the Vikings and the Bears, but that's just completely up in the air. We know that the Lions did it last year. They got good coaches, good GM, a returning staff of the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, adding and beefing up the middle, adding some good draft picks. Pretty savvy, so we'll end up seeing. But yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, as thinking that they're probably going to get 11, 12, 13 wins somewhere in there. So all right. So next Thursday,
it's the new Lions. That's all I hear over here in Michigan. It's the new Lions, but they have proven to be not the Lions of the past. I have an old saying that my father and my friends love, but my wife hates. And that's the Lions are the Lions. But I don't think that I can say that anymore, at least not for now. So,
yeah, nope, they've definitely built up some good momentum. So, with that being said, though, I'm looking forward to the Packers kicking the absolute crap out of them. So, going to be exciting. Going to be fun to watch too. So, next Thursday, make sure to tune in. We'll have a new episode for you and some new content. We appreciate everybody for listening, for taking the time out. Even that's just for a couple of minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. We just super genuinely appreciate it. Make sure you share with your friends and your family and other Packers fans if you know anybody who likes to get as nerdy and analytical and in depth into everything the Packers as we do. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. We would genuinely appreciate it. Jordan and I are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We know that'll take quite a while, but anything you can do to help do that and subscribe and like and tell a friend, we would genuinely appreciate it. Know that too, that additional episodes will be coming out, not only YouTube, but Spotify and Apple as well. You can connect with us on X. Mine is Robbers79, Robbers 79. And Jordan's is Olson Jord, Olsonjord. And we do have that below here in the banner as well throughout the video. So until next time, Packers fans, have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Thank you.
Been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay.